Welcome to Progressivism at its height. This is Melinda Klein. The progressive era in America established reform movements by society at city and federal levels. With the large number of immigrants coming to the United States by the 20th century, the growing middle-class constituents were concerned over growing urban poverty, poor housing, labor, and disease. They decided to make changes. Progressives wanted to reform the system that put protective laws on the books. This was a growing movement in the West in efforts to help the poor and the working class. Could poverty be cured like a disease? Some social scientists believed that this was possible. They believed that criminals and the poor were products of their environment, not what family or ethnic group they belonged to. In essence, progressives waged a battle to improve American life in general. Progressivism was a movement that had its roots in the 1890s but did not reach its height until the 1910s. Middle-class women played a prominent role in organizing reform initiatives, creating committees, and gaining political experience. During World War I, progressivism would be altered but did survive. Its belief that society could be better is still with us today and has persisted over the century. This is a photograph titled Newsies at Sketcher Branch, St. Louis, by Louis Hine in 1910, which hangs today in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Reformers did not like to see children, especially ones under 14 years old, working for themselves, void of parental supervision, lacking in daily school attendance, and worst of all, no Sunday school to instruct them in Christian ethical living. Newspaper boys such as these, reformers believed were a serious threat to society. They took on adult habits of gambling, sleeping in the streets, spending whatever money they made on vice, and basically living one day to the next, however they could. They lived by their wits. The weak and the young were subjected to cruelties by older boys and adults. By 1912, child labor reformers were able to convince Congress to establish a Children's Bureau in the Department of Labor. Reformers promoted the practice of good childhood experiences. This would lead them to require state and city governments to oversee construction of tenements and housing in general. It was believed that better housing and education would create solid, upstanding citizens. Americans, like others of European descent, drank a lot of beer. In addition, they consumed spirits and wines. From the 1840s, women in particular began to see alcohol as upsetting the social balance. Working class men in particular were targeted as consuming the family wage with beer and drink, leaving little money for food and shelter for their wife and children. Middle-class reformers targeted foreign films for being indecent and lacking morality, prostitution, pubs and saloons, as they were places in which vice and illicit sex were known to take place. The Triangle Shirtwaist Company occupied the top 3 floors of a 10-story building in New York City, employed approximately 500 workers, mostly young female immigrants, working 14-hour days during a 60 to 72-hour work week, sewing clothes for a wage of $6 to $10 per week. The tragedy that happened March 25, 1911 at this particular sweatshop could have happened anywhere. This tragic urban fire led to the death of 146 employees. Urban cities were busy places. There was an unending supply of new immigrants to American cities, and the economy demanded transportation of goods in and out of the city limits. Three of the most needed reforms are addressed here. They include reforming municipal services, transportation, and housing. It was intended by the middle-class reformers to create order out of urban chaos. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, connected with it the Meatpacking Act, is a United States federal law providing for the federal inspection of meat products and forbidding the manufacture, sale, or transportation of adulterated food products or poisonous patent medicines. The act arose during public education and propaganda from people such as authors Upton Sinclair. He gained particular fame for his novel The Jungle, which dealt with conditions in the U.S. meatpacking industry and caused such an uproar that ultimately led to the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. Like most middle-class Americans at the time, Roosevelt thought in classical bias terms. He considered native peoples savages and did not believe blacks were fit to vote or hold positions of authority, even in city governments. With this in mind, reformers aimed to acculturate immigrants and blacks to American ways, but never expected or promised them that they would enjoy middle-class status that included but not limited to the following: home ownership, a college education for their children, life in America's suburbs, and professional jobs. From the 1890s, restrictions on immigration became accelerated. Millions every year came to America from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The Protestant middle class wanted to keep Catholics and unskilled workers out. In addition, hot-headed immigrants, especially the Irish, were considered strikers and threatening to business. The Progressive era affected children's lives as well. The Boy Scouts of America was created in 1910 after a British model to train boys into young men knowing their duty regarding honor, morality, integrity, loyalty, and service. Girls were included in the progressive movement as well with the founding of the Girl Scouts, Campfire Girls, Brownies, and Bluebirds. Hundreds of thousands of children worked every day and could not afford to take off time from work to attend school. Their lives were not protected by child labor laws. Middle-class reformers and cultural morality offered leadership to boys and to create responsible citizens both in and out of the workplace. 1911 was an election year that would bring a new president into the White House. Running for this election was Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, Roosevelt, a progressive, and Taft, a Republican. Both Taft and Roosevelt by 1911 were ardent opponents. Wilson used this to his advantage, winning a landslide victory in the election of 1912. By the early 20th century in America, the cultural restraints from the 19th century seemed to be fading with the entrance of mass transit and increased efficiency of communication, while middle-class city residents and businesses enjoyed the comforts of electric light. It would be in this world that Henry Ford made available to millions of middle-class consumers an affordable new form of personal transportation.